Hello and welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast, episode 42. I'm Kurt.
I'm Gigett.
Nightson.
Oh, Oreztes.
It's always you.
End of line.
Handor.
And our spotlight topic tonight we have a very special guest, Bazgrim from BazgrimTV, who has been intensely following and covering the development of Pantheon since its beginning back in 2016. And he has a library of YouTube videos and extensive knowledge of the game. And we're excited and extremely happy to have him with us tonight. So welcome, Baz.
Thank you. I'm extremely excited to be here. Thanks.
We are super excited to have you here, too. So before we kind of get into our spotlight topic for the night, talking about Pantheon and MMOs and all that, end of line, do we have any announcements for tonight?
We do. We have 2 upcoming streams. We have our next follow-up to the Dungeon World RPG, Saturday, March 9th at 9 a.m. We'll be continuing that saga. Then we have our next Paper Scandal side quest, which we just this morning had part 1 of. We'll be having 2 more parts of. We'll talk about momentarily. But our next side quest is going to be Saturday, March 23rd at 9 a.m. And that is going to be Force Him and Picnic, formerly Force Ham and Picnic, written and run by Cecil Ho. How? Okay, I had it right the first time. Fantastic.
Yeah.
We've actually talked about Force Him and Picnic quite a bit. But we've never played it. I know that Kurt has. So we're all really excited to check it out.
None of us have played it. No. Yeah.
What?
So
Oh, wow.
I backed it.
Well, I know y'all are super excited then.
Yeah. I followed its development quite closely.
He'll play it at some point before the 23rd, though.
About 3 times.
No, unless it shows up from Kickstarter.
Well, awesome. So let's get into what we're excited about tonight. First and foremost, I'm going to go first because I'm very excited about this. Gan, the Great American Novel, written by Christopher Gray, who was our side quest host last month. His Kickstarter has gone live this week. There's still 25 days to go, but I think they're within like a couple $100 of meeting their goal already, and it's only been live for like 5 days. So go back that, because in my opinion, it is the most fun RPG I have ever played, and I have played a lot of them. So go back this. Go show Christopher Gray all your love. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch our side quest from last month so you can see what GAN is all about, what writing the Great American Novel can be like. Go back it. I can't say it enough. Go back Christopher Gray's Great American Novel. That's what I'm very excited about.
I guess I have the next one since you put it in here, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
So Spencer Stark's Icarus, a game of great civilizations and how they fall, is like a world building storytelling game where you build up this great civilization and then watch it crumble, and it is super dark. Where we played it super dark. I got to play it.
I don't know if you could play it in a lighthearted, happy way.
Oh, yeah.
And the civilization falls.
We had, like, martyr slaves that take the diseases of the wealthy, and that was, like, the most mild thing that happened in the game.
We'll talk more about what that was like next week.
We'll talk more about that later.
I want to play that game.
I feel like I could just listen to you guys play Civ on Discord. And
It was basically Civ, right? It was a storytelling game where you tell the story of Civ without having to wait for other people's turns, so that was nice.
But that Kickstarter went live last week, so it's only going to be open for another 2 weeks. It's already fully funded, so go back it because you're definitely going to get your thing.
I've seen it. It is pretty. It's a pretty game. Go get that one.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I just had to toss in, I'm super excited because I just finished version 2.5 of Forest Mother, which is my little storytelling game about forest spirits and the guardians they raise to defend the forest and shit. I'm going to talk a ton about it next week. So if you're super interested in that game, definitely tune in next week. Same pixel time, same pixel channel. But I'm very excited because I finished it like an hour ago. I can't wait to get it on the table.
Well, I was napping.
So we're going to go play that tomorrow? Is that what
yeah, let's do it.
So Baz, is there anything you're excited about?
I am excited about the next Farmville update. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that still a thing?
No, the obvious answer, surprise, surprise, I'm obviously excited about Pantheon. I think I would be shot if I didn't say that. More specifically, I guess I'm looking forward to their next major development milestone, which is called Project Fairthale, which will be the first time in development that there will be a zone that is launch quality. It has all of the systems that they've been talking about, all the updated animations and everything. So when you're in this zone, it's like that's what Pantheon will feel like at launch. So that's what I've got my eyes on right now.
That's super awesome.
Nice. That's awesome. So, Oreztes, do you have anything you're excited about?
I am excited about Captain Marvel coming out on March 8th.
Me too.
So probably have to go watch that the day before we do our March 9th game. Yeah. Dungeon World. And also Tenra Bansho Zero, I'm super excited about. I don't know if anybody else is.
One of those
Tappy.
new releases from 1999.
You all can blame
Right there
Tappy
with
for
you,
that
man.
one. You can blame Tappy for that one. That's all Tappy. That's all him. It's like Exalted, but it works. That was all I needed to hear.
Yeah, I suspect there'll be more to be talked about next week after Oreztes
Definitely.
has had some chance to eat the book more.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, let's move into what we've played recently. We at Pixel Scandal played Cruise Ship of the Damned. I don't know why that was hard to say. Spirit of 77 with Dave Kazay this morning. What did you guys think of the game?
Spirit of 77, aside from 10 Candles, is I think my favorite game.
As I said to you guys earlier, I honestly could not tell from 1 minute to the next if you guys were off the rails or right on target.
It's hard, and it's hard to tell, honestly, for the players.
Yeah. No, that game was super crazy balls today. It was so much fun. I'd never gotten to play Spirit of 77, but I've played other Dave Kazay games and other Monkey Fun Studio stuff. But man, this was real good. This is really, really good.
I've never been offered cocaine and mescaline in the same RPG.
I only offered you cocaine. I offered mescaline to someone else. So.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. and what was it? Your pet? Your emotional...
Oh, my pygmy polar bear, Marshmallow?
Emotional support polar bear?
Yeah, my emotional support polar bear, Marshmallow.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was super amazing. Well, that is up on our Twitch channel, and it will be available on YouTube's... Tomorrow.
Yeah, 24 hours after the original...
Yeah.
Per affiliate standards.
And if you back us on Patreon, we did a recap and talked about the game and talked about a lot of our feelings and what happened and kind of recapped everything. So if you go to our Patreon, which is...
Patreon.com/pixelscandal. Yeah.
Do the thing.
I think it's the Nightson. What level is it to get the recap?
I believe it's the $5.
Okay, so there you go. If that's a thing you're into, it's up there.
Yeah, and for $5, you can also tell Curdy sucks, which,
Right?
You can do that, yeah. Just send me $5 and you can tell me I suck.
That's not a
phenomenal
bargain.
Patreon tier.
as predetermined from the Happy Jack stream.
That was a charity event, but I mean, I'll take the money. That's fine.
Well, cool. So, and then you guys have been playing...
No, not you guys.
Well, we are horrible suckers for punishment, and we have par for the course. We have gone back to play EverQuest 2 again because we're terrible, terrible people, and there's not enough good games coming out right now. Apparently,
Yeah, there's a triple XP weekend thing going on the Time Lock Progression server, and I have been playing for a couple of weeks now and raiding with a guild, and I had a lot of fun. And I kind of roped Nightson into coming back and playing with me, so we're leveling up some characters. We're having fun.
That does sound
a little
fun.
bit.
I enjoyed EverQuest 2 up until the point when it turned into just standing at the front of the dungeon waiting to hit max level, and then I was like, I think I'm done with this game.
Yeah, the power leveling was not the right choice to go with you.
Yeah.
It's all about the story. So, Baz.
Speaking of it, MMOs real quick. Gigett, did you get your Final Fantasy 14 account unlocked yet?
From being banned for saying horrible things to people.
That is not what happened.
That is not what happened. No, it is not unlocked yet. I went to a con and then got the flu. That's my next thing on the list.
You've been at home for a week to call Square Enix.
But like dead, so
Yeah.
Anyway, Baz, what have you been playing recently?
I have not really been playing much at all, to be honest, which is like kind of sad, but following Pantheon is such a full-time job for me right now that I like don't really have time to play anything else. It's kind of sad. Like it's very fun. But sometimes I wonder, I actually just tweeted about this the other day. I was like, I feel like when the time comes that I actually like sit down and play Pantheon, I was like, I feel like I'm gonna forget how to play an MMO because I haven't really played any game in so long. I'm like, I'm probably gonna suck. Like I'm gonna have all this knowledge, and then I'm gonna be like, I don't know what to do.
What? I don't know what to do with my hands.
You're gonna have like the gamer claw because your hand is not used to being in the like gaming
Exactly.
position. Oh man. Yeah, no, I totally get that. I have to step away quite often from video games for like long chunks of time, and then when I come back, I'm like, how to game? My hands, they're
Yeah.
from... Yeah.
So
exactly.
no playing an enchanter for first character is what I'm hearing.
Well, cool. Well, that takes us into our spotlight topic. So, Endo, why don't you take it?
Yeah, so we had a previous episode. I talk about Pantheon more often, a lot, and I'm sure I annoy these guys a lot with it. But we had a show Pantheon a few months back where we had a discussion about it, and some of our cast haven't really played old classic MMOs. They kind of started with the World of Warcrafts, Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, and whatnot. A lot of people like me feel like a lot of the soul of the MMO genre kind of got lost along the way. We talked about that previously. Today we're going to talk about a specific aspect of the old school MMO, and that's meaningful identity and reputation. I'm especially excited. Gigett and Baz both come from a psychology background, and I think they'll be able to speak really, give a good perspective on this because psychology is a very important factor when it comes to identity, reputation, and of course, repercussions of your behavior in an MMO where it actually affects your gameplay. Where I think most people would say nowadays, it doesn't so much with things like LFR and Dungeon Finder and things like that. Your identity in a video game doesn't really matter as much anymore as it used to. So we're going to discuss that. Pantheon, for all its intents and marketing, is marketing itself as a reminiscent MMO to those classic MMOs. And that really is the one specific aspect of it that you cannot effectively go it alone. To a degree you can, but at some point you're going to find that you're going to hit a wall and you're not going to be able to accomplish the tasks you want to do without having friends by your side. And you do that by community and helping each other out and becoming someone in your guild or in your circle of friends that can go to for help. And then they in turn help you as well. I think we've lost a lot of that. And I think a lot of us are really hoping that Pantheon is going to reignite that kind of community. And I think most of the Pantheon community feels pretty strongly about that. The first thing I'd like us to all talk about is going to be what the pros and cons are to a recognizable identity and reputation that's tied to your persona on an online MMO.
Well, I think one of the big things is it tends to keep people honest. You tend to be more conscious of your actions, less willing to risk ostracizing yourself in your environment. Because if you suddenly can't raid because nobody will invite you, well, your progression, your gameplay, your Thursday night is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, how am I supposed to ninja loot if everybody knows my name?
Ninja looting is great. The only problem is it only works once.
And so you got to make it count.
Better make it count.
In a game like this, it'll happen one time, and then you're going to be put on blast, and no one is going to let you come to a raid again.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? It just brought to mind the normal social experience that goes on with social media, especially nowadays with how many social media outlets there are, and how people interact, being keyboard warriors and so on and so forth, not having a name or any responsibility, right? And then how are people going to? I have to imagine a large population of people are going to be used to being able to say what they want freely, right? Mm-hmm. And then even smaller portion of those people are going to play Pantheon and probably spend like 4 days behaving that way, and then just be like, completely denied and
I
no
think
reason to log in.
I think a lot of people are going to join Pantheon and then realize somewhere along the road it's going to dawn on them, like, oh wow, I I'm really setting myself up for failure by treating other human beings this way.
Yeah.
Being
That
this
would be
kind of
great.
a person.
In a greater scheme of things, it would be truly wonderful. And this is all, I'm almost romanticizing this now at this point. But it would. Sorry, I apologize. I do this sometimes. My brain is weird. But if Pantheon were to somehow correct some of that behavior and bring people back to, that old RuneScape type of mentality where you have to work together and you have to create friendships and bonds with people and so on and so forth.
I think that's possible. I know that's certainly the goal, but I think you're right that it's going to probably take a while until people get used to it. Because, like you said, this is a concept that has been lost to the genre for so many years that people have just, in the meantime, developed so many bad habits.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to, for some people, I think it's going to take them a while to get used to that. But really, in my experience, the Pantheon community that already exists that follows the game, they get it, and they're overwhelmingly positive and just constructive. And so having that as kind of like a baseline is really going to help. So when people come into the game, they see how the vast majority of people are already acting. And I think that will help them understand quicker, like, okay, if I want to belong here, this is how I have to act. So I think the community is already in a really good spot to, if they like uphold those values, that as new people come in, it's very obvious very quickly like how things are supposed to go.
Yeah. It's what I keep imagining the one guy that goes, "You're a trash healer," boop, and they just disband. And I assume he's probably not going to find many groups.
Well, what I'm wondering is, other than like players just not wanting to group up with certain people, is Pantheon, like, is there a system in place that Pantheon is using so that you have the ability to, like, boot people or whatever if they are jackasses? Like, is there a system for that they're working on?
Well, I mean, if you just mean being able to kick somebody out of your group, if they're being pretty standard, just have the group leader just remove them from the group and they're done.
Yeah. I guess what I mean is, like, with like looking for group and that kind of thing, like it's a randomly made group. Is Pantheon going to have that system, or is it going to be like you have to go stand in, the middle of town and be like, "Hey, who wants to run whatever," right?
Yeah, that's the key difference, is that there's no system that just randomly puts people together in a group. That's kind of what has killed the social aspect in MMOs thus far, is you get thrown in a group with random people and it teleports you to the dungeon, you run the dungeon, and then it disbands the group, and you have spent an hour and you did the dungeon and you probably maybe only said a couple sentences to the group and there was no real interaction. But like you said, the key difference is that now there will be tools. A lot of them are kind of still undisclosed. There will be tools to help people find groups. It won't be quite so automatic as like a LFG system. There will be tools though to that they've kind of teased at to help find people that maybe have similar goals to you or similar play styles.
More like a bulletin board kind of thing instead of
kind of.
system.
The phrase that we've been kind of using is it's called P harmony. So it's almost kind of like this,
what?
which sounds odd, but it stands for Pantheon harmony. It's not urine harmony. But
oh, thank God, I was worried.
Well, now I just have no motivation to play the game. So looking forward to P Harmony.
Basically, the idea is that there'd be some sort of like profile that you could put out there to help find people that you would maybe vibe with. But yes, a lot of it will be, you see somebody in the zone chat or something that's looking for a group, but you see their name, and because would be very difficult, if not impossible, to change your name. Like if you develop a really bad reputation, you're probably just going to have to play a different character if you don't want to be recognized, which is obviously a huge disadvantage. So that's where that key recognizability with the name comes in, where you see the name and that might trigger a memory where in the past, they ninja looted or they were just completely trash talking you the whole time. And you're like, well, we're not going to invite them to the group. And so it's admittedly not like a foolproof system because not everybody might know that person is a bad person, but
Right.
over time, eventually, like I said, if the community kind of enforces those values themselves, stuff will get around. And also, not to be too rambly, but I also wanted to point off, you mentioned social media. My personal opinion is that I think social media and YouTube and Twitch and these sort of things that weren't really around back in the early 2000s during the EverQuest days, like you also mentioned, it keeps people honest. I think the fact that social media and stuff is going to really accelerate that, because everything's being recorded nowadays. Everybody's streaming, everybody's recording to YouTube, because information can get around the internet so much faster now. People's names will start being heard a lot more quickly.
Yeah.
So, or if you don't even necessarily know who somebody could be streaming live on Twitch to thousands of people, and you wouldn't even know it. And you're stupid enough to ninja loot something right on stream. And now all of these people have your name, and they know. And so I think it will help for the bad people to kind of get weeded out a little bit faster because of that.
That clip will be on Reddit within 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, top post.
And it will never leave
Exactly.
the internet. That character will forever be branded.
So
with
real
that.
quick, a couple things that I kind of want to touch on. We were talking about the bulletin board or the P Harmony. I think personally, I would like for them to display the account name in addition to the character name, because like you said, if they're going to roll an alt, they're still going to do it on an alt. They're just going to get a different drop and ninja that thing. So if you're doing like a group finder on a bulletin board or something, it's like, okay, well, who's this guy? And it has the account name. It's like, yeah, no, the account name is the one that's blacklisted. Like, I don't want anything to do with this person because it's the person, not the character who's being a
You know what
douche.
would be interesting is, without giving away the account person's information, if they had an Uber driver rating system, but you group
That
up with
followed you?
somebody and then you're like, hey, you were cool, and so you walk around with
I have a 5-star dungeon rating.
right.
Yeah.
Not a
do you want me
Disney.
to-
So there's hang on real quick, end the line. I think a little bit of what you're missing out on, Oreztes, is that now correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong. Moving on to my
Thank you.
second point.
So I believe that
That's
Pantheon
ugly.
is going to be the type of game that it's not going to really cater to having several alts. You'll really have to put a lot of effort into a single character, wouldn't you? Don't you?
You got it.
It's not like the
Yeah.
old school where you can just run six
Yeah.
6 characters and have
Yeah,
them all
but
max
sure,
level.
you can make an alt. That's totally true. But the amount of time and investment it will take to get a character to a level where that would matter again is way too much of a.
That's your penance. That's your
Yeah,
punishment.
that's the.
Yeah, I mean,
Insane.
but it is like you're not going to do some shitty thing at level 40 and it took you a month and a half to get to level 40 and then be like, well, I did these 3 stupid things and now everyone knows about it. Let me make an alt and spend another month and a half leveling an alt to
Well,
do this
then-
behavior again. No, that's not
Well,
going to happen.
My next question then is going to be, how long is it going to take you playing a character to realize that this is actually exactly what you want to do for the rest of your time? If you're only going to be doing one character at a time. If I start playing as an enchanter and I spend a month and then hit level 40 and there's a patch all of a sudden and it's just like, I don't like this anymore. I don't like this character. I've wasted a month and now I have to re-roll. That's
a development responsibility to make sure that the things that they do to the game in development as far as balancing does not swing too strongly one way or another. There's a difference between balance swinging and then tuning.
Well, the balance was
Yeah.
just an example. I'm just saying, like, if I get to the point of my class where it's like, okay, these are your new abilities and this is how they function and how they work,
Sure.
and it's like, I don't
Yeah.
really like it anymore.
That's
better
an
roll.
important point, and that also falls under the development responsibility too. And I know, speaking to Joppa, who is kind of the one that's designing the classes, he is being very intentional in making it so that within maybe the first 10 levels or so, you have enough abilities in your toolkit that fit the core identity of the class, so you can really get a good idea of what your role actually is. And also for there to be like also some lower level dungeons, or maybe even kind of like mid-level raiding type situations where you can get a good idea of what your role actually is and whether it's something you like and how that class plays before you get to max level. So maybe within the first 10 or maybe 20 levels or whatever. So to try to avoid some sort of those situations, it's all about putting that information up front so you can make a more informed decision.
What I will say is the way it worked in the other games was that you played your character at a higher level, and because you're forced to always group. I mean, not always, but you're forced to group overwhelming amount of the time. You kind of vicariously learn the other classes by playing with them. You see what kind of tools they have in their kits. You get familiar with them, and you ask them questions like, "Hey, what did you do to that mob? Oh, I can do this mesmerization thing on it, where we don't have to mess with this guy until we're done with this guy." And you're like, "Wow, that's cool." And then you kind of say, you learn the thematics of that class, and then you say, "That's something that I want to play," and you can go and play it. I also suspect that there will be some kind of loosened NDA during the beta phase, where people will be able to get to kind of somewhere middle range of the levels, and people will be able to post content and information and videos about these classes, so you can kind of get a sense of how they work. In fact, there's a lot of information about the classes even in current development that they've released pretty in-depth articles and spell listings on their main website, where you can clearly kind of understand what they're going for in the classes. And remember, I had even talked to you about how much you love Scholar in Final Fantasy XIV, and how much the Druid is super interesting. I thought you might like the Druid just because of how the healing works with its avatar and whatnot. But yeah, you can already read up on things. But tuning and balance swings, I mean, that happens in every MMO, but I certainly understand the concern about playing a game where you have to invest this much time and then something could swing completely the wrong way, and then all of a sudden you feel like your character's busted. Yeah. I mean, that's just the responsibility you have to put on the developers to not do.
Yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense. I wanted to go back real quick a couple of minutes to what Gatorbait was saying in chat there about it was always so much fun getting to know the folks you would group up with, and some groups, it used to be whenever you would do a group, even if it was a party finder, you would interact with the people in your group and meet them and hang out with them, and then you would see them around. But now, like with so many games, these party finders and group finders are all like cross server and everything. So you meet up with people and you're never going to see them again.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to Pantheon being like, hopefully it's a closed system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's how we met Handor, is that it was making a group and you guys were like, hey, this guy's cool. Let's just, keep hanging out and playing games with him. Otherwise, we wouldn't have become friends with Handor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
a prime example.
That's really cool that that Pantheon is kind of taking it back like old school and making it so that interpersonal communication with people and the way people treat each other is going to be more important. And, if you come up against somebody that, like, maybe they're not being a dick, but their personality doesn't match, you can be like, okay, cool, run, and then move on. And it's not, it's going to be kind of neat to see more interaction. I mean, I think the sad thing that's happened to MMOs, MMOs are supposed to be people playing together, and it's become very singular. Like, you sit in a room by yourself playing a game, you look for a group, you get in, you do your raid or your dungeon or whatever, and then you leave. I mean, there's no massive multiplayer anymore. It's just you by yourself, and maybe if you're friends and you group up in, that you already have in real life, then cool. But you're not really interacting with other people in the community, the gaming community, and so it's neat to see that coming back.
If Blizzard replaced all the people in your Dungeon Fighter group with AI, no one would notice.
Oh, no. Yeah,
actually, they would notice more dungeons getting completed successful.
Yeah.
For any World of Warcraft players, how many times have you gone to LFR and walked away with making a friend? I'll answer for you. It's never happened. They're irrelevant. You're just going in there to experience the content, but the actual social aspect, the actual friendship and cooperation is largely lost in that scenario.
Yeah.
Here you can't do anything with that. That's just, you can't accomplish anything in a game like this without that.
Yeah,
I've been holding.
That really
on.
is. I was just gonna say, like, that aspect is really the single most important part of Pantheon, in my opinion, and for me too. Like, that's why I love MMOs so much, is because it's such a social outlet, and you can make very real friends. Like a lot of people, you know, if you can't, there's a lot of people that are maybe they're mobility challenged and they can't get out of the house, and interacting with people online is how they socialize. And I guess that kind of ties in with some of the psychology that we were talking about. Like when you're accomplishing these tasks with other people, it makes them just so much more memorable in your mind than if you were to just do it by yourself. Like in like Skyrim or whatever, any single player game, like anything that you accomplish in those games, even though it's satisfying, the memory isn't gonna last as long as if you had to work with other people and you're sharing that memory. Because that's the sort of thing that like 10, 20 years later, people can still vividly recall these memories that they have from EverQuest or whatever other social MMO where they were working together. You know, they meet up and, hey, you remember this time that happened, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's the sort of things. And that, because it creates those this real friendships. I think you mentioned even sometimes you can meet people in a game, and because again you recognize their name and you play with them over and over again and you really mesh with them, like that friendship can transcend. That's what transcends the game, is you can then create a lifelong friend. Even I have some friends that I met in a game and neither of us play that game anymore, but we are still friends and still talk, because that's the very like real social things that can happen in games like that.
Yeah. I have a confession to make. Well, hold on. I have a confession to make. They say that we've met and we've become friends, but really what's happened is I've just been using them for 10 years, and I'm just waiting so I can ride along their coattails when the next big MMO comes out. So sorry, guys.
The truth is Handor is an asshole, and he's just been hiding it from us this whole time.
He's playing that long game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that long game. Long con.
To speak to that, I think this is why I'm so curious about the WoW Classic launch. I'm not super crazy interested in it personally. I might hop on it and dabble a little bit, but even World of Warcraft Classic did have that feeling too. You did have to have that social aspect. You know, you had to go to that meeting stone and get at least 3 of you to get the 4th and 5th person there, and it did exist. I'm really curious to see how the World of Warcraft community, who transitions from live World of Warcraft to classic World of Warcraft, if they embrace that or if they revile it. Like, I'm really, really curious to see how that works out for their community. I hope they embrace it, because that would send a very good signal to Pantheon to say, hey, there's enough of us out there that want this experience still. We don't want the loot pinata world anymore. We don't want the, hey, I just want to get into an LFR and get out and just go back to doing my own thing. Like, we want this aspect of a game to exist. I think, depending on when Pantheon comes out, and obviously we don't know, we know that WoW Classic will probably launch, it more than certainly will launch first. I'm really curious to see if they embrace it or not. I think it'll speak volumes to what we can expect on Pantheon launch. Although, of course, most of the people who are following Pantheon now, we clearly do want that. we clearly already acknowledge that. And there are many of us. But WoW is, of course, is the whale, right? So if that community will embrace it, then I think that'll bode very well for Pantheon.
So yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, I think you're right. I think it's already very clear that there's a lot of people that want an experience like Pantheon. But at the same time, it's true. The MMORPG genre just kind of rises and falls together. No pun intended, but, well, optional. But if any MMO succeeds, they all succeed. So if people do play WoW Classic and they embrace it and they find that it's fun again, then they're more likely to get just back into the genre in general. They're like, oh, MMOs actually can be fun. You know what I mean? And like you said, that sends a message to other people that the genre is not dead. I'm curious too, because I think with WoW, I think because it's a WoW Classic is so similar kind of in feel initially to modern WoW, where people will jump into it and it'll still just kind of feel like they're playing WoW. Like it from my perspective, it might not feel different enough that they'll remember that they kind of have to act differently. It'd be like they'll jump into it, oh, I'm just playing WoW, and they'll play WoW almost like they would on the live servers. But compared to Pantheon, it's like this is a completely different game, completely fresh slate. I think it might be easier to kind of reset that way.
No, absolutely.
Now-
And something that I think is interesting about what you guys are all
Poor
saying
Nightson.
is that I'm just gonna keep going. Because if I don't say it, I'm totally gonna forget my train of thought here. You guys keep talking about community and making friends with people, and like the push in the MMO community, or at least the ones that we kind of interact with, is to bring back some of that interaction with other players that we've kind of been missing out in the last like decade almost. Because the early 2000s, late 90s, there was the trying to find people to play with and becoming friends with them. And I think it took kind of a certain group of people that may have difficulty with like social stuff already, and gave them kind of a really a safe environment for them to like, hey, these are my people. These are gamers like me that are also sitting in a room on a computer. They're not judging me for the thing I'm doing because, my friends in real life don't play video games, or my mom's yelling at me to get off my computer, or whatever it was, that didn't understand what like kind of we were getting out of playing video games kind of thing. And that community that we built online, what that meant and what those people actually meant to us personally, that maybe people outside of the gaming community couldn't understand what that friendship was actually like. And now people are kind of saying, I want that back. I want that. I want to make friends online again. I want to have a community that I can talk to with the same interests and the same love of the game. And I think it's really great that instead of moving away into that, like sitting alone in a room and not talking to anybody and just continuing to play a game, that we're moving away from that and wanting to have that social interaction again, and wanting to build those communities back up again, and not have like that toxic, like, I can just be an asshole to each other because who cares? You're not a real person. You're another person. You're just your avatar on the screen. Like, we're going back to that interpersonal connection and caring, which I think is a fantastic turn in kind of the gaming community, that we're craving that. We're wanting to go back to that.
For sure.
Nightson, you had something?
Well, and I don't know if
hopefully it still applies.
I know. I'm sorry.
I wanted to know, and maybe this is cross, and you just keep talking. You just keep talking. For fuck's sakes. Surprise war.
I was apologizing. Sorry.
All right, and so I don't know if this has been announced or if this is NDA or whatnot, but is there going to be a transmog system in the game?
I don't think they've spoken to that, but I would say it's extremely unlikely. It would kind of go against the tenet of the game, I think.
Well, the reason I mentioned,
I assume you're talking about in Pantheon, right?
Yes.
So what I have heard is that so there will likely be some cosmetics. I don't know if it exactly will work like the transmog system in WoW or whatever. But there will very likely be cosmetic armor. But the key differentiator is that, like, again, this is all subject to change, but the way that they're kind of planning on it now, if there's cosmetics, there'll be an option in your options menu to kind of to choose how you want to view the world. So if you want to see everybody's cosmetics because you want everybody looking their best, you can do that, and you can enable cosmetics. But there are still a lot of people that kind of want to embrace the recognizability of items. Like that's an important part of the game, is that even the appearance of your gear matters. And so if you've spent the hours in these like dangerous zones and you've got that flaming sword that no other item in the game looks like, that you can go into a town and just stand there and everybody's like, oh my God, where did you get that? And they start talking to you. Where did you get that? How did you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And that kind of sometimes opens up some friendships, even just those conversations. Or, maybe even if you're really nice, you can offer to help them, get that item or whatever. But lost my train of thought. Okay. So the cosmetics. So if there's, there'll be an option to basically just disable cosmetics. So if it's important to you that you can be able to tell what somebody is wearing just by looking at them, and you don't want to see any of the cosmetics, you can turn that off. So that should satisfy both sides of that, if that's the direction that they go.
Like, for what I was getting at though is in games like Secret World or Final Fantasy 14, you very rarely see two people that ever look the same. And people are identifiable by how they look just as much as how their name is. So you might say, oh, there's that person I was grouping with last week, or there's this and that. Whereas 2 months in, that super rare, awesome sword that made everyone come and talk to you, 30 people have that sword. They're all wearing that same sword now. So,
well, not to keep coming back to like vanilla WoW, but that's kind of like my first introduction to World of Warcraft, or to an MMO. And I specifically remember being in, 6 months into my time of playing vanilla WoW, getting into a very successful 40-man raid. And then being one of the first rogues on my server to get a specific dagger, and being decked out in that Zul'Gurub, or Zul'Gurub? Being decked out in the Zul'Gurub shoulders, and at that time it was advantageous to wear just the chest piece and just the shoulders, and then have everything else be the tier 2
Night
Stalker gear, and people coming up to you as a rogue and other rogues being like, hey, how did you do it? What do you suggest about this? And how are you spec'd? And who do you run with? And yeah, it did create a lot of, just based on the armor you're wearing and sitting in town, maybe you're chilling at a target dummy or whatever, trying to maximize that DPS. And it did open up a lot of dialogue, and there was a lot of respect shown mutually between people, I think, based on that narrative and that idea of what you're wearing, and kind of like a class system, I missed that, actually. It's funny that you bring it up because I've forgotten all about it.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern about all of this is we're talking about being more social and interacting with other people, but to do that, you're going to have to remove like all the quality of life and all the convenience that party finders and all this stuff brings with you. 15, 16, 20 years ago when I was playing Ultima Online, I had all day to sit and play and not have to worry about stuff. Like, I didn't have responsibilities. I was in school. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a family or anything like that. I like being able to hop into Final Fantasy right now and queue up for a dungeon, do my dailies, in and out, 30 minutes. Granted, that social aspect stuff is not really there, but I feel like I can go in for a short period of time and get a lot accomplished. In the game like Pantheon, my concern is I'm going to log in, and if I don't have 3 hours, what am I going to do? Like, there's not going to be much of a point unless I have my group ahead of time ready, waiting for me to get on. In that case, I'm making people wait for me to show up.
Yeah. So that I think that's a valid concern. I hear that a lot, actually, and that's kind of where those tools that I was talking about earlier come in, because that is absolutely crucial. That's going to be vital to the success of the game, that people can get in, and there are these tools, which, like I said, they haven't really elaborated on yet. They claim to have, they've got ideas that they're working on. It's just that sort of stuff will probably come out in like alpha and beta when there are a lot of people on each server. That's when they'll really be able to refine that sort of stuff. But so they got some ideas, but that's definitely where that comes in, that you be able to log in and not have to waste 45 minutes just spamming LFG in chat to get into a group. Stuff that allows you to get into a group faster and even keep groups together over multiple sessions. So one thing that they've kind of teased at is like a Caravan System, which I think was in Vanguard. I don't actually know much about it, but the overall idea is that you would be able to you log out for certain periods of time, and without exploiting it, which would be the key, is basically you'd be able to, when you log back in, if the group that you were with continued playing, you would be able to log back in kind of in the same general area to wherever they are now. So
like your body's
then you can
chilling
pick,
in their Pokeball.
basically, so then you can pick things back up and get back into it sooner. Things like that. There'll be more tools, but they've mentioned that kind of the target that they're shooting for is that within about 2 hours, you should be able to get into a group, accomplish something meaningful. It might not be a lot, but as long as you feel like at the end of 2 hours, your character is more progressed than it was when you started, that's in general what they're going for. So that's going to be one of the ways, certainly, that they're going to have to kind of push the genre forward and come up with some pretty innovative ideas to do that without, like you said, trivializing the travel and just and making things meaningful. It's going to be a very fine line. But yeah, that's going to be very, very important.
What I'm realizing is Pantheon going to be able to cater to the fact that a lot of the MMO players are getting old?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
They're well aware of that, and I think that's kind of where these ideas are born from. Like they're not only targeting that audience. I'm a firm believer that there will be a lot of younger people or just people that have a lot more time that will be playing it too. But the devs are fully aware that a significant enough portion of their target demographic, the people that want that challenge, also might not have 10 hours a day to play. They want their 3 hours or 4 hours or 2 hours. They want that to be intense and want it to be they want it to be challenging. But you have to minimize just the wasted downtime. Like I said, just spamming LFG. So, like I said, obviously a lot easier said than done. But that's the key, is to cut down the waste, because they know that a lot of the people that played the MMOs back when these social dynamics were more prominent, even though they had tons of time back then, now they have families, they have jobs, they might only be able to play for 2, 3, 4 hours a day. So that's where that all comes in for sure.
I'm really looking forward to what the future of MMOs looks like in 30 years when the people our age are all retired and have
my God.
the amount of time we had when we were teenagers again. And like MMOs are going to be amazing in like 30 years when we're like, yeah, let's do it. My whole life is playing video games again.
Yeah, but remember, they're going to be developed by 20-somethings.
Right, that's true. We're going to be like, I think back in my day.
I have a few points to that subject. One thing is, whatever Visionary Realms decides to do with the looking for group system is largely going to be irrelevant. Either they're going to pull off something that is successful, or someone will create something on the internet to take over for them.
Yeah.
So even if the game doesn't succeed perfectly, someone will create a utility on the web to circumvent it to become that thing. The technology is so prevalent now that they'll take that solution offline. So no matter what, a solution will come out of it, whether it's in-game or out of game, to handle looking for more players. I think hopefully it'll be successful in-game, but if it's not, I fully acknowledge that a solution will crop up out of game.
Sorry, some of the chat.
Kratukone in the chat goes, new EQ expansion, EverQuest, get off my lawn!
And in 40 years, when we all retire, I fully expect EverQuest will still be releasing expansions.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It will be.
Yeah.
My second thing is, I am not against Visionary Realms doing quality of life things. I'm not that person. However, there comes a point where you have to understand that Pantheon is supposed to have its own identity, and it shouldn't be a game for everyone. There are a ton of MMOs out there to suit I want to get online and do a ton of shit and get 5 levels in an hour. You can throw a dart and hit 6 of those MMOs. I don't want Pantheon to be that game. And if it's not a game for someone that doesn't have that time, I think Pantheon also has to be okay with accepting that's not my base. That's not my target audience. I'm not elitist. I'm just saying. It's a game that's supposed to have its own identity. I don't want it to become another MMO.
But is there going to be enough people who feel that same way to sustain their business model.
There are enough. I mean, I don't know what their bottom line is. I don't know what their financial goal is for subscriptions. What I can tell you is there's still a ton of people.
In circles a couple times.
We have. Look at the player base that are still playing EverQuest 2, EverQuest 1, Ultima Online on private charge right now. There are a ton of people playing on the new Dark Age of Camelot Phoenix server. Yeah, there are enough of us out here. I'm not going to say it's enough of us out there to sustain a company as large as Visionary Lands for a long time. I hope so. But I guess we'll find out when the game launches.
Yeah,
it's hard to say. I mean, I do actually have a little bit of insight on that. They said in one interview a while ago that they're a very lean team. It's a fairly small company. I think they have like 30 to 40 employees right now, and it is growing, but it's not going to be huge. They're very like obsessive about keeping a budget, and what they said in the interview was that currently what they're targeting is to be profitable with only about 10,000 subscribers to the game, which in the grand scheme of MMOs is like nothing.
That's small.
So, that's very small. Like I predict personally, I think there's going to be a lot more than that. But it's at least reassuring that they're being that conservative. Because it is kind of hard to tell like how many people is that really going to resonate with. But yeah, it seems like they've kind of thought that through though.
One of the things, I mean, we're talking a lot about like systems within the game, but I mean, the community can solve a lot of these problems with just organizing into guilds and saying, hey, we're a group of people that only have 3 hours a night, camp at wherever, and we log in at this time on Wednesdays and we log out on this time on Wednesdays, and this is what we're doing this week. Right. And I mean,
yeah, it just means that the community within the game has to get organized for whatever kind of play you're going to do.
Right. I don't know if the game has like guilds and that kind of thing. I don't know.
Oh, it would have to.
I assume. But so you got to have somewhere to drop off your P Harmony. I like long walks in the dungeon, and
there needs to be a mobile app where it's like rogue swipe left, rogue swipe left, rogue swipe left, enchanter swipe right, cleric swipe right.
That's hilarious.
You mentioned if somebody does come up with like the equivalent of an LFG, it's probably going to be this is the 20th century we're talking, or 21st century. I don't know, 21st century. Like everything's going to be on an app.
It's
like,
sure,
totally.
No, for sure.
I think someone will.
So
and who knows? They may allow APIs to the game too, kind of like EverQuest 2, where your profile has an API hooked to websites that you could do it through there.
Yeah. So how do we think like we're talking about identity and reputation and all that kind of stuff. I mean, when we're talking about like people being a dick, right? But what about people who are maybe not as skilled as playing and have difficulty getting themselves into groups because maybe they're just not as good as other people? I mean, how do you think?
Or they right-click on minecarts and disappear.
Hey, that is a perfectly valid way to play WoW.
Or they're a filthy key turner.
We have established that Kurt clicks on everything.
If my cursor changes, I'm gonna click.
So I mean, are there going to be like downfalls to helping out a friend who maybe isn't as good at the game, and is there going to be like something that affects you as a better player or someone who has more time because you're taking time out to do stuff with that unskilled player, or maybe the player who's lower level than you, or whatever it is? I mean, is there going to be a way to help those people, or are they going to be like, oh, there'll be a group of shitty players that all connect, we're going to play this together and be shitty, and then, are they going to be ostracized?
I think Baz is right. I think there will be a lot of newer players, but I think the majority of Pantheon players, at least initially, will be a bit more of a mature community. And I think the mature community has a very big decision to make. Are we going to be that kind of community that's going to say, don't invite that guy, he's a shitty enchanter? Or are we going to be the kind of community that's going to say, hey, enchanter, let me help you out. Let's find you some gear. Let me show you what these spells do and a better way for you to play your character. that's how it worked in the old days. I will admit, in the more modern days, even with older MMOs, you do see that behavior more prevalently than I would like to admit. But honestly, I think the community of Pantheon is going to have a big decision to make to how to address that concern. Because if we just shun people because they don't quite know how to play and we don't embrace those people and kind of bring them into the fold, then we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot as a community pretty early on.
Yeah, but I mean, there's plenty of resources out there on the internet that teach you, a rotation or what your abilities do and everything. So maybe it's like, why should I this guy's hand and teach him how to play his class when he doesn't want to do the research himself to learn what his own abilities do?
Oreztes, you have to also take it into consideration, and this is something that I learned early on, and I wouldn't understand this exact component had I not met it early on in World of Warcraft, and that was the fact that there are players out there that just have disabilities that are handicapped to begin with, and it wasn't until later that with me grouping and trying to help somebody that I had found out that they actually played with one hand. They could only play with because they were missing an arm, or another person that I met that I found out was actually legally blind and was able to make adjustments to be able to group and turn out to play very well later on, despite those handicaps and those adversities. So you have to ask, are these people terrible because they don't want to do their own research? Or are they terrible because
they've never played an MMO in their life?
Yeah, maybe they don't know any better yet.
I don't think Pantheon is going to be anybody's.
That's possible. But like my first experience and one of my fondest memories I started with WoW. I started late in WoW. But I didn't know shit about MMOs. I didn't play a lot of video games except for like Sims, right? Up to a certain point. And then I jumped into WoW and was just running around lost, and someone found me and like PM'd me and started, inviting me to their guild and showed me where to go. Like they're like, oh, you don't want to be here. You got to get to Stormwind. Like they brought me to the right place to level. They told me what to get. Like, and then I ended up in that guild until I met you guys. Like I was in that guild for 3 years, maybe. Mm-hmm. And that was some of the best time. Like
it started with getting directions to Stormwind. It all started with just getting directions.
Yeah, like because I'm a level 5 gnome trying to figure, like wandering around Ironforge. And
I'm fucking lost here, man.
You look lost.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. You said like no one's going to start out with Pantheon, but that's not necessarily true. Most people who start playing a video game like an MMO, it's because someone else they know is playing it. Like, I don't know, maybe like Mrs. Oreztes, who's playing Final Fantasy for the first time right now, where you say, hey, there's this cool game, come play it with me. And so they don't have any MMO experience. They don't have the past knowledge of MMOs to kind of cart over.
I specifically chose Final Fantasy 15 for her because it is an accessible game and it is very friendly. Pantheon, I don't think by any means is going to be, if it's going like as old school, what everybody kind of is hoping it does, it's going to be like trying to get somebody first MMO to play EverQuest nowadays.
It's not as inaccessible as the games were then. When I say old game, I'm talking about the what they say, the bones of the house kind of old school. But like the interface and the system and the action bars, like all that is more modern now. It's as accessible as that now. We're not saying, hey guys, we want to have this, tiny UI with only these 4 buttons, No, it's not like that. It's just the soul of the game is meant to be like that.
I think that's a really important differentiator, and that's why I don't like to really call it an old school game, because as soon as you use that phrase or even compare it to EverQuest, people think, oh, okay, well then it's going to bring all the same problems that EverQuest had or whatever. Like it really is, it's as much new school as it is old school. And you're right, the foundation, the really core principles like the sense of community and the challenge, like those are just the few select things that they're kind of extracting that have kind of gotten lost to the genre that need to be revitalized. Taking those core values and then inserting them into a very modern game with modern graphics, modern UI, modern interface. And so like it will be it will be somewhat accessible. Like I said, the key though, which again is a very fine line. It's much easier said than done. But so how do you make it accessible to new players without sacrificing the sense of challenge and the satisfaction, that sort of thing? So that's really that's the nail that they're trying to hit on the head.
Will it be as accessible as Final Fantasy 14? I don't know. Possibly not, but it's certainly going to be overwhelmingly more accessible than like EverQuest 1 is, or EverQuest 2, or RuneScape, or UO, or any of those things.
Yeah, and on that note too, and kind of tying in what we were talking about before, VR calls it onboarding, like that process of bringing in people that maybe have never played an MMO that's so classically spirited, or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of people that never played those games, and they don't understand the kind of the culture or how these games work, and it's kind of foreign. But again, if the game is to be successful long term, it's going to be very vital to bring in new people. So you don't have such a population that's so top heavy. You know, they might play the game for even 5 or 6 years, but you need to be bringing in constantly new people to kind of refill the population like that. So it's going to be very important that the community, to a degree, does step up and show them the ropes, the people that maybe have never played a game like this. And so that kind of ties into the mentoring system to a degree. I know you were talking about, like, is there going to be motivation for veteran players to kind of help new players? And the answer is probably yes. And that the mentoring system is addressing that, in that we don't really know the details yet, but to some degree you will be incentivized to kind of take new players under your wing and kind of show them what this game's all about.
Yeah. So kind of our final question here before we wrap things up for tonight. Do you guys feel like a game like Pantheon, where reputation and your meaningful identity, do you think it can work with the current generation of gamers, with where there's very few consequences for behavior? And, you know, do you think that this is going to work? Do you feel like Pantheon is going to be successful in that way? Not as a game, but this
I
aspect
have
of it.
made it my mission, because I'm kind of in a unique spot, because I'm 25 years old. So the fact that I have kind of one foot in classic MMOs and one foot in new MMOs is kind of a unique position to be, because I started playing EverQuest when I was 5 years old, which is something that not many people can say. So I have that experience and kind of know how it goes. But it also kind of allows me to almost kind of act as a bridge, as I like to consider it, in between those two generations of gamers. So, yeah, I'd like to think so. I kind of like what I was saying earlier. I think it will take a while. I think it will be difficult to, like I said, show them the ropes, but I think it's absolutely possible.
Yeah, I was going to say, ironically enough, we glazed over this very early on, and I honestly believe that just through social norms and how things work, you know, socially, I think that you'll see with a game like Pantheon, with as many people who want to support it and really want to see it succeed, who are going to have that classic backbone of integrity and all of those personality. Well, excuse me, end of line. That are going to have those personality traits that you instinctively kind of go towards. I think if there are more of those than there are of the new age, younger type of people, huh?
Fortnite players.
Well, yeah, I can't bash the Fortnite community.
Sorry,
but,
we
but
have
those,
a teenage son, so we hear a lot of
Yeah.
what the teenagers are yelling at each other a
Oh,
lot.
I bet it's toxic.
So, you
Yeah.
know, it's not our child, but everyone else on the internet.
Hopefully, it will succeed in, eliminating that toxicity and overcoming that that narrative that's been created that seems to be acceptable nowadays.
I think it's going to require that the old guard that are clamoring for this community back to put their money where their mouth is and stand up and be the good in that community, right? They're going to have to be the example and build the community that they got given, that they came into, right? Someone was nice to you once, right, when you started out, and so you made it through, and now it's your turn to give that back as someone who's a veteran of this community.
Well, and don't just like be a dick back to someone that's being a dick, or maybe somebody who makes a joke that's inappropriate. Like, talk to that person and say, like, hey, that's not really, like, that's not the kind of route. Like, if that's who you want to hang out with, go find your people. But, like, if you want to hang out in this group of people or in this guild or whatever, like, we're trying to be cool here. Don't be a dick, right? I think End of Line put in the doc here, the Wheaton's Law, don't be a dick. Like, have that conversation with people that are being a dick. And if they continue to be a dick, cool, then write them off. But, like, help people that maybe haven't learned that there's a different way to communicate with people within a game, that you can be positive and you can be supportive and you can have this positive interaction. You don't have to be horrible to each other.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying why I'm so confident is because I already see that even on the, like, in Discord and all the Pantheon platforms, even though we're not in the game yet, I see enough of that happening that I'm confident that'll work out. Obviously you can never get rid of toxicity 100%. It'll always be there, but I think when you look in the context of most gaming communities, like, it's by far one of the most uplifting communities that I've personally been a part of so far, which is why it makes it so much rewarding to be able to create content for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. A friend of mine said something very profound to me, and it's pretty simple, actually. In my very early days of Vanilla WoW, it was actually my rogue mentor. His name was Sedina. Probably one of the best rogues I'd ever. Is it? What was your rogue's name? Nightson.
I couldn't tell you.
Did you ever get to meet Sedina?
No.
So, anyways,
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Sorry. We had some civil discourse in the 40-man raid, which was natural, right? And my comment to him was, and of course I was much younger at the time, and I had said, it's just a game, just why is just we're supposed to have fun. And he had made the comment of, at any time that you involve people and communication, it is no longer just a game. And I was like, holy shit, that's so fucking true. And I took that to heart. I did. And from then on, I was very careful about what I said and who I said it to. And I kind of became a different person as a rogue in World of Warcraft.
Well, I think that's important to remember that behind every avatar is a person. Like an actual person that's behind every avatar. And so that's how we should be treating each other in game. Yeah.
For sure.
So anybody have final thoughts? I mean, unfortunately, End of Line is on a business call that he absolutely had to take. But does anybody have any final thoughts before we kind of say goodnight for tonight's show? Cool.
Looking forward to
just takes
some point when it comes out in the next 8 years, maybe.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to End of Line making me play and buying me the game. And you're muted.
You're muted.
Endo, you're muted.
You muted, Endo.
Oh, I will totally buy you the game if you play.
Yeah.
I already have a second copy for Nightson already from my alpha pledge.
Nice. So Baz, do you want to plug where people can find you and anything you want to plug?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's pretty simple. It's at BazgrimTV, pretty much everywhere. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff.
Cool. And Kurt, can you tell the people where to find us?
I sure can, Gigett. Yeah, people can find us all over the internet. You can go to pixelscandal.com to find out a whole bunch of information about the show, find back episodes, and links to all of our social media, like Twitter at pixelscandal and all that stuff. If you're looking for go live notifications, and probably our most up-to-date communication is going to be Twitter, And if you want this as an audio format, you can find our show on iTunes or Google Play or any of the podcast delivery systems of your choice. Yeah, even Spotify. We're on Spotify.
We are.
Yeah. And if you want to watch back episodes, YouTube videos, but you don't like going to websites, you can go to YouTube and search Pixel Scandal. And please subscribe there because our YouTube has languished and we have under 100 subs. And so we do not have a custom URL on YouTube because no one goes there.
That is true.
Yeah, that's where you can find us on the internet.
And for our regular watchers, knowing how much I like to annoy Kurt, I feel like I should get so many brownie points for not having done anything annoying to you, sitting so close to you this whole show.
Besides, give him the flu just now. That he
Surprise
doesn't realize
war.
he has it.
You didn't
Well, I mean,
boop
we
me
can't
once.
see. Yeah, we can't see what your hands are doing on the bottom of the camera.
So many
Camera.
boobs. And I want to say, if you like this show and you would like to support it, you can do that. You can sub on Twitch. That's one way to support us. Or we have a Patreon at patreon.com/pixelscandal.
Yep.
Alright.
Cool. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. We'll be back next week for our regular Nerdcast. Next week, Saturday at 8 p.m. PST, Pixel Scandal time.
Thanks again, Baz, for joining us. We
Yeah,
really
thank
Baz.
you
appreciate it.
so much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Baz.
thanks. This
Thanks
was
a lot,
Thanks
awesome.
for
brother.
having me, guys. It was a
Good
lot
to
of
meet
fun.
you.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.
Good night, everybody.